Thank you very much, Ambassador Kennedy, and the panelists as well. I could not wish for a more inspiring discussion, and thank you so much for your time. If you could give us a few minutes to set up for the next session, that actually ends our panel discussion, public service, a conversation with Asia 21 fellows. And as you all know, by the fact that you're here, our session today is called Next Generation Leadership, Shaping the Future of the Asia Pacific. As we were preparing for this next session, we asked ourselves who will be best suited to actually have a fireside chat with Asia Society CEO Josette Sheeran. We only came up with one name, and the name was a first name. And as you all know, in Japan, we never call anybody by their first name only. No san, no chan, anything. It's just his first name. Personally, the only other person I can think of which immediately comes to mind and we call them by their first name is an extremely well-known baseball player who is a superstar. So in my mind, anybody we call by our first name only is a superstar. So we were thinking in terms of the person that we would like to invite is easily said to be the most outspoken, influential Diet member, House of Representative member of his generation. We actually scrubbed that out to say that we believe that the person we're inviting on the stage, Mr. Shinjiro Koizumi, is the most influential House of Representatives member of all time. So we're delighted to have him join us with this fireside chat. Our President and CEO of Asia Society, Josette Sheeran. When I think of Josette, I think of a quote that's actually attributed to Mahatma Gandhi, and that is, "Be the change you wish to be." So without further ado, if the furniture is immaculately placed in place, I would like to hand over to our Josette Sheeran and Mr. Shinjiro Koizumi.
Kennedy, thank you. And as I know she's thinking right now, say how amazing are those leaders? And that was really, really fabulous. Thank you for traveling from afar. And how suitable that we have a leader of the next generation here in Japan to talk. Before we go there, I just want to say a couple of things. One, Asia Society was founded 63 years ago by John D. Rockefeller III, literally out of his love for Japan. He really felt that the most important work he could do in his life was to inspire a group of people to come together to build bridges not only between the US and key nations in Asia, but also between the neighbors in Asia itself. And he created this incredible platform. And I have to tell you, this is one of the great days for me to be here and witness the birth of Asia Society Japan. So I'm so thrilled. So, and thank you for joining us. I want to thank this man of mystery who's sitting here, who many of you know, James Kondo, who is the co-founder, co-chair of Asia Society Japan, and Terry Portier right here, who have been able to put together an amazing group of people. All of you who are founders, can you raise your hands here? Wow, so exciting. And I'm really honored to just recognize a very esteemed colleague of many of you, but also of Asia Society globally, Toyo Gyoten, who is on our global board. We're all in love with you, Toyo, and we so appreciate your leadership. And just to say, we have a few of our own leaders from Asia Society's Global Network that have flown in from throughout the world. We have Prime Minister Kevin Rudd here, who's president of our Policy Institute. We have all the way from Australia, Warwick Smith, who has been the founder of Asia Society Australia. We also have Duncan Clark, who wrote the book The House That Jack Built, about Jack Ma's rise, from our global board. And we have, in addition, two of our key policy leaders, Danny Russell, who was President Obama's right-hand man on Asia, Danny Russell. And Wendy Cutler, who was the lead negotiator in TPP. Are both our key people now at Asia Society's Policy Institute doing incredible work globally and with us. So one of the things Carolyn pointed out is that the time really is now for Japan's leadership in the world. It's really a critical moment. And you and I were just discussing kind of the rising tensions in the world and the need for countries to step up and be part of that dialogue about where we build the future. But she was also pointing out that it's time for a next generation to step up and that they're bringing new ideas to the table. Could you talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the new generation in Japan and what might be different from the leadership that we've already seen?
First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me tonight on Fireside Chat without fire. Yes. I hope we can be fire in this discussion. If you say next generation in Japan, I feel a bit awkward as a politician in Japan because if I talk to young kids in Japan, then I'm saying I'm a young Diet member. I'm not to them. What I want to say is one of the issues in Japan on politics is how to reach young people. I think I don't want to say I'm a young politician in Japan. Every time I say, or I'm introduced as a young Diet member in Japan, in front of the young people, it's creating a big, gap between young people and young Diet members. So I don't want to say that. So it's a bit different thing. But if you say what's the difference between the older generation and younger generation in politics, one of the big differences is communication. For example, in the meeting and the conference and discussion inside the party, my generation, sometimes, not all the time, use SNS via smartphone inside the conference room. But older generation don't know what's happening between young Diet members inside the Diet room, in the conference room. So for example, when I have to organize the discussion, sometimes we have to do, you are the one, raise hands and say something. Now, we have smartphone. So this is something never happened before. So for example, if you imagine G7 or G20 in 10 years, everybody can use smartphone and reaching the consensus or drafting a paper among the leaders, communication tool, and how to make it is very, very important. So communication is changing. Yeah, not all the time. Yeah.
I think you raise really deep points about the fact that the rhythms between generations are very different, and even if someone's 5 years younger than us or 10 years younger than us, their way of doing business may be different. And so the 16-year-olds of today may feel the 26-year-olds are really out of it, right, with the kind of tools they're using and the way they think. I will say that, you know, in Japan, there's so much leadership in robotics and virtual reality and AI and all these things. And I'm feeling, I always think of myself as an early adopter of technologies. That, wow, for the first time I'm feeling this is moving past me, a whole generation where virtual reality or robotics are more comfortable. And so I think this point on communications is a big one, because in a way we have these big gaps.
Right. And the speed is different.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we say, okay, let's do it. Let's do it means do it right now.
Yeah. Yes.
Right now. Not next week.
Mm-hmm.
And
or in 10 years.
right. That's right. If we say, let's do it, it's possible to do right now. But for someone, some people who don't use technologies and communication tool don't know how to do it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this gap is big. So that's something I feel frustrated in politics, but doing my best.
You know, you have perspective of being in government and being out of government, being raised in a family where government was important, as I was, and so very comfortable with that. I am struck by the fact that many young people wouldn't go into government service. It moves too slow. And some feel maybe government's irrelevant, that why do we need it? And then we're reminded by headlines, actually government matters. You know, we can't ignore it. But what would you say for people that want to make a difference in the world? Is government a place where this can happen?
I think it's natural for people to feel government is irrelevant. And because there are so many choices now. For example, if you see, you wrote a book on Jack Ma, his impact, not only Jack Ma, but also Steve Jobs and Zuckerberg, their impact is sometimes bigger than the impact country can make. So for the young people, making a difference is not only choice for becoming a politician. If they want to make a change in society, there are so many choices. Maybe becoming the president of Asia Society, right?
Send in your applications.
Yeah, so I think that's natural. But there are many things only government can do, and only politician can do. That's why I chose this way. Yeah.
You know, I met with the founder of Uniqlo today. I told him he has many followers in the U.S., including in Brooklyn. He's viewed as, yes, viewed as very cool. And I brought him some sake made by hipsters in Brooklyn who have created a sake production. And I'm very worried that it doesn't taste as good. But this admiration that Japan has in so many ways, and I have to say I'm very struck by, for example, the field of virtual reality. In the US, it's very much, shoot 'em up games. In Japan, it's a lot of, creating, princess lands and different things. It's a very different perspective that really has a lot of followers. But do you feel, are you frustrated that the world doesn't necessarily always see Japan as being innovative and on a leading edge like that?
Of course, it's difficult to understand the country, in a foreign country, I spent 3 years in the U.S.
Columbia University.
Columbia Grad School. And well, when I get back to Japan, and many people ask me, how was America? How was the US? But I was in New York City, I was in the DC, but I can talk about the US, you know? It's so diverse. There are 50 states in Japan. There are 47 prefectures. If you visit Tokyo, can you talk about Japan? Right? So I understand it's very difficult to understand the country itself, but trying to understand it is very important. That's why I felt very thankful to former Ambassador Kennedy to visit many local cities. And sometimes she joined marathon. And she tried to be, in touch with Japanese citizens and people. That's very important. So if people think Japan is slow and not innovative, we have to change. But there are so many innovating things, so I'm optimistic. Mm-hmm. And this day, I think today is day 1 for Asia Society in Japan, and also day 1 for Japan and Asia, and also not only Japan and Asia, but also US and Europe and Asia. I think Japan should be the shaper of the rule, and also connection between US, Europe, and Asia. Yeah, I think that's the next step we have to do.
I love that thought, because I've always felt that, if the U.S. tilted toward Asia, my only criticism was it was a little bit too late and too little, because Asia is so important, and the rise of Asia really is changing and redefining the world, but never tilt without Europe being involved. And I think that dialogue, so Asia Society now has a center in Zurich, our first center in Europe. Europe very much wants to be part of this network and discussion about the future of the world, and we welcome Japan leading the way on this.
Yeah, on that, today, Ms. Kadla is here. She was working on TPP. Thank you very much for working that.
We all wish it turned out differently. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if how she feels now.
That's why she's with us.
Yeah, but by President Trump's decision to withdraw from TPP, of course there are so many voices and pros and cons. Of course, Japan is always welcome U.S. back into TPP, but at this point, I think there is a good impact to TPP 11 and its future by President Trump's decision withdrawing from TPP, which is Europe getting closer to Asia. For example, the UK is now interested in joining TPP. It could haven't happened without President Trump's decision to withdraw from TPP. And also now, Japan EU EPA is going to be included. And so I think the distance between Japan, Europe, and Japan, India, and Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, and other countries are getting closer. So thank you, President Trump. Of course, Japan-US alliance is the most important bilateral relationship. Yeah, but plus, we need many party concerned and partners in this region. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
You know, one thing that Asia society has focused on is the power of culture and music and art to move things where it can't move. And I have to say, maybe I'd like to ask you your favorite music, but your father did move America by visiting Graceland. And we know he loves Elvis.
I don't do like my father.
But the power of that to connect people.
Yeah.
And so when we look at Asia and some of the barriers that exist, right, and things that are not allowed, you know, discussions between countries or people or groups that haven't happened before, do you think that, you know, music and culture could have an impact in that? And that's certainly something that sometimes, you know, NGOs or Track 2, we call it, governments can't do that well, but organizations like ours, you know, we welcome ideas.
Not only just music, but also movies is something I'm interested in. For example, last month I went to New Zealand. And I went to the National Museum in New Zealand, and the special exhibition is about Gallipoli.
It's about what?
It's the Gallipoli War in the
yes,
World
yes.
War I, the Battle of Gallipoli. If you see what happened in the history in the World War I, when New Zealand and Australian troops and vessels went to Gallipoli, Japanese Imperial Navy ship accompanied to the Australian ships and New Zealand ships. The name of the ship of Japan is Ibuki. And now, the biggest event on the holiday in New Zealand is Anzac Day, which is on April 25th. So Anzac Day is celebrating, you know, the Gallipoli and also battle. So history is always difficult, especially with Asian countries and based on Japan's history. But if we can share something in history, it could be a power. So when I went to New Zealand, I talked with some New Zealand people and friends. Why don't we make movies on Gallipoli or Ibuki between New Zealand filmmakers and Japanese filmmakers, actresses and actors, joint movies. I think that's a good idea. So maybe between Asian countries, between US and Europe, organized by Asia Society. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love those thoughts because I think the power to build those bridges has to happen, not just in formal policy discussions or at the G8, but it has to take a broader form. One of the things Asia Society does is we have a center in Los Angeles and it's focused on the film industry. We've started a US-China Film Summit to recognize the new actors and directors that haven't been seen by the world. And we want to do that throughout Asia to really raise awareness of the talent that exists. Mm-hmm. What do you think are the main challenges for Japan going ahead?
Depopulation. Very simple. Depopulation. And also, Japan is aging. There's a keyword when we talk about Social Security reform. As a director for health, labor, and welfare, the keyword is 100-year life. If you believe it, not, Japan's life longevity for women is 86 years old now, men 80. In 20 years or 30 years, female life longevity is becoming 90. And now, if you count the number of population over the age of 100 in Japan is 69,000 people. 69,000. Bigger than my constituency, Mira City. So, of course, this is happy. You have 100-year life. Happy thing. But when I talk to a bureaucrat from European embassy, he said there is no such discussion in his country. For example, like nursing issues. Well, I asked why. He said, because we don't live that long. So I was kind of confused. Which is, more difficult or easier to tackle with the problems with 100-year life or problems with shorter life. But everybody wants longer life. But when you reach longer life or 100-year life society, there are so many unprecedented issues. So that's something I'm facing now as a director for Social Security reform. Until now, for example, in Japan, there is an 80-year cycle as a life cycle. 20 years for students or studying, and 40 years for working, and 20 years for retirement. But it's becoming, in the stage of 100-year life, 20 years for studying, 40 years for working, 40 years for retirement. It's impossible. That's why.
Sounds really exciting.
Right? Sounds exciting. Yeah, that's why I'm trying to fix the Social Security system to fit a new style, which is 100 years lifestyle. So I think for all the Asian countries, including Singapore and Hong Kong. Now Hong Kong life longevity is the longest in the world. Japan is in the second. And Singapore is also a very healthy country. But in the future, near future, 100-year life, this keyword is not only for Japan, but also for all the Asian countries. So in the future, if it's possible for Asian society to work on symposium or discussion on 100-year life with Asian countries and leaders, I think that's something we can do.
I love that idea, and I'd like to propose a best-selling book that you could write, which is Why the Japanese Live for 100 Years. I think everyone in the world would read it. Do you think it's the green tea?
Yeah, we have many things, not only the song of sukiyaki and sushi. Now we have 100-year life, which is an item to sell to the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and what is the key?
The key, let people know 100-year life is happening in Japan. I think that's inside the political arena and the bureaucratic arena in Japan. 100-year life is shared with everybody. But in the Asian arena and the world international arena, I think this idea, this norm, 100-year life, is a new idea. So I want to sell it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we will put together something for that to be discussed. What other issues do you think that, I won't say the young generation, I'll say your generation of leaders throughout Asia that are coming into positions of power, they could connect on? Are there other issues? I mean, health is one, longevity. Are there other issues where a dialogue with young leaders, between young leaders throughout Asia would be helpful?
Well, that's something I want to listen to, how young Asian leaders think. In Japan, or to me, what I'm interested in is technological innovation and its impact to our lives. For example, now, U.S. and China, are facing with fire. Not fire here though. I think technology is something behind between these two countries. If you see the US, there are some big IT companies, so-called platformers, GAFA, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. If you see China, Tencent, Alibaba, and Baidu. But if you see Europe and Japan, we don't have that kind of big platforms. In that case, what should be the strategy for us? How should we face with this trend, this situation? I think this is the key issue for the future. Yeah. So this is something we should talk. Yeah. What kind of rule do we need? What is privacy? And what is convenience? And what is data? So data economy is now here. But we don't know yet what's the impact really means to our lives. So that's something I'm interested in. Yeah. And when we talk on technology, I think young people are very good at it, much better than us. That's why when I talk to young people, younger people, I don't want to pretend I'm young. Because when I was a junior high school student, I used Pocket Bell. I don't know you understand Pocket Bell. Well, anyway, I don't want to explain that.
Oh, a beeper.
A beeper.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, we call it Pocket Bell.
That's a much cuter name.
Yeah. Okay. I allow you to use that.
Yes.
When I became a high school student, we started using PHS, and then after PHS, we started using cell phone, and after cell phone, we started using smartphone now. And when I was a college student, internet came. But when we talk to high school students now, junior high school students now, when they were born, they were everything. And from 2020, in 2 years, Japanese elementary school students are going to start studying programming. So when I watch news in Japan, Japanese teachers started studying making a programming. It's stupid. Young people are much better at making programming. But for example, in Japan, when we started teaching English, teachers started learning English. And then when we are going to start programming, they have to learn programming. And so, for example, in 10 years, what's coming after programming? What kind of burden, what kind of skill teachers have to teach. It's too much burden in education. What teacher have to do? To me, in my opinion, is to face with kids, to face with students. Teachers don't have to have good skill on programming. Of course, speaking, if they can speak English, that's better, that's okay. But education is not just that. So I want to change the way of educating young kids in Japan, in a modern way. Ask professionals to teach kids and teach as a professional to face with people, to face with kids. So I don't want teachers to make mistake or misunderstand to catch up with new skills. Of course, it's important to recurrent and learning all the time and skill up. But the meaning of learning skills and meaning of being a professional, we should discuss more. That's why I feel kind of awkward to talk about technology in front of younger people and younger kids. They are digital native. Their idea, their mindset is something beyond our generation. That's why, as a politician, I want to make a condition. Young people's idea can be prosperous and can be more free.
I'm absorbing, I mean, this is a profoundly interesting line of discussion that I've never heard anyone articulate so well, in that how can we hope our teachers can keep up with the skills needed? And so we need a whole new way of thinking about bringing in the skill sets to be with children. One of the things we've done at Asia Society, we have a whole education work, is to identify the 4 competencies that young people around the world need to succeed in a global world. This is kind of the soft power piece of education, the soft piece, like the ability to communicate across cultures. So we've developed a train the teacher model on how individuals can be successful, but it's not the technical skills. Like, that's another issue. But this idea of shaping humans who know how to have a conversation across a bridge that's broken, or across issues that are difficult, or how to think about new solutions. But I think this idea to bring in, maybe that's what a new part of the 100-year life can be, is giving back then to work with young people in schools. So tell me, when you think about Japan's image in the world, what frustrates you? What do you think people don't understand that's inaccurate, that you would want to tell them about Japan and what it is and what it can bring to the table?
I'm not frustrated that much about that, because I'm proud of Japan. And if I'm not proud of Japan, I wouldn't become a politician in Japan. But I always believe there are a lot of things Japan can do more. And also there are so many things Japanese people can do more. So, for example, under the era of 100-year life in Japan, there are many lifestyles. Today, former Prime Minister Rudd is here. When we go back to politicians' life cycle is also changing, I think. Please look at Mr. Rudd. After prime ministership, Now he's working on Asia society and many issues. For example, when we see former President Obama, when he retired, he was 55 years old. If there is 100-year life for President Obama, he has 45 years after retirement. So I'm interested in what kind of life he's going to have. Because his 55 years and his 45 upcoming life is almost same, span. Now he is working on the campaign, very energetic. But I don't think he is doing the same thing as former president, like making speeches and visiting all over the world and making library and writing books. I think he's going to do a lot more. And Mr. Rad too, and in Japan, maybe that kind of things is something we can see in the near future. Like Japanese baseball players are going to Major League after serving for our country in Japan. Japanese politicians are going to work on something international, like Mr. Rad, maybe President Obama. Then, in the future, former leaders summit is something we can see in Japan, hosted by then young leaders of Asia.
Bravo. Yes, a great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea. I want to go back to one question on technology. Japan really has been a leader in robotics, in some areas of AI, and technology is very much, if I can put it this way, garbage in, garbage out. If we program our robots to be mean, they will be mean. If we program them with the same human pathologies that we've had, if we look at a world of AI, what is the world we're building in? And just as you said, there's many ethical issues. What is privacy? What is data? What do we do with our data? What could you envision? I think this idea of a dialogue among young leaders or this generation that's coming into power that understands technology better is a great idea on that. I would feel Japan could play a leading role in that.
Yesterday, Prime Minister Abe met with Indian Prime Minister Modi. We reached working on artificial intelligence together, Japan and India together. In August, I also visited India to visit Indian Parliament and also some Indian startups, defense startups and also medical startups and educational startups and agricultural startups. India has a lot of talents on IT, but Japan has a shortage of working forces on IT and programming. That's why there's a big potential between India and Japan working on IT and AI. But we are so different in terms of, I mean a lot. You can understand why Mr. Rad is so laughing. Yeah, we are different. But there are so many good differences. One is demography. India is booming. But Japan's problem is depopulation, shrinking. So Japan has a strong point on pushing IT, innovation and withdrawing to the society without break. We just, need to keep pushing it. But for India, there are so many young people from universities to this, getting jobs. So if they push AI, IoT, and IT stuff, it's very difficult for young people to have enough jobs, employment. That's why I want to tell to everybody in the world, in terms of technology and science and programming, please come to Japan if you want to push it. Our problem is not having enough jobs. We have enough jobs, but we don't have people. So please come. That's the biggest difference between Japan and other countries. And that could be a strong point in terms of technology. Yeah. So that's why we need to speed up.
So that's another big idea. You see a future where Japan welcomes in.
Yeah. So now, inside this diet session, we are going to discuss about this issue. How to welcome more foreign workers with good condition. For example, agriculture, in construction, and nursing. There are so many points we have to solve. So let's see. Yeah, it's very important for Japanese government to get understanding from the people.
So I want to ask you about your optimism or pessimism about the future. And the way I'll frame that is to ask you, do you feel that the future is going to be brighter for, if you have children, for those children, or more difficult?
I'm optimistic. Yeah, all the time.
And what gives you optimism?
I think leaders have to be optimistic. Otherwise, leaders can be, no meaning.
Okay, now I want you to solve a mystery for me. I was just in Osaka this weekend.
Yeah?
There was not one lock on one bicycle in the entire town. And I had a friend with me who's just in Japan for the first time who said, won't someone steal those bikes? And I said, it's a strange thing here. In Japan, people don't steal other people's stuff. But what is this secret sauce in Japan? Why are there no locks on the bikes? This would be...
I think that's a good question, not to the Japanese people. Yeah, because, if you see something interesting in Japanese society, that's very natural to us. That's why it's very difficult to understand what's good about Japan for Japanese people. That's why we need other perspectives. So if you find a good thing about many things we don't understand or we don't acknowledge, that's something we are proud of. So I'm optimistic, that's why, because I believe there are many innovations and goods and ideas we can share with foreign countries. Yeah.
And I think that's true. I once gave a speech, the 10 things I love about Canada, and you've given me a new idea to give this speech, the 10 things I love about Japan. Mainly I gave that because I don't think countries fully understand the good things they represent to the world.
Yeah.
They can't see it, as you said. And I think it's important to see that, but
Yeah.
Japan has many beautiful parts. So last question, do you think in your lifetime we'll see a North Korea open to the world? An easy question for the last one.
To my personal comment, my father visited Pyongyang twice when he was prime minister. So in that case, North Korea was open to my father. But your question is if North Korea is open to the world. Let's see. Let's see. I don't have fantasy. North Korea is North Korea. We have history between North Korea and Japan. Japan has abduction issue between North Korea. So this is something North Korea has to solve. At the same time, I understand nuclear issue and missile are very important for everybody in the world. But since President Trump visited Singapore to meet with Kim Jong-un, something is different. And we can see a change. But we don't know yet. It's a real change. So let's see. But I'm interested in Mr. Kim Jong-un himself. He is younger than me. But very interesting. No one knows how old he is. When I talk to many specialists and I ask all the time, how old is he? Some people say 34, some say 35. But anyway, he's younger than me, but in the same generation. Sometimes I think about what kind of situation he is living, and what kind of pressure and stress he has to grip everything. Can you imagine a man in the 30 years generation has to control everything? At the same time, he is checking how the US and other countries are watching to North Korea from satellite. And also, Kim Jong-un is different from his father and grandfather. He studied in Switzerland when he was young. And so he knows outside. So I'm not sure what it means to him. When he was young, he knew Switzerland. So his world, his view is not only just North Korea. Then he visited Singapore this year. Then he saw Marina Bay Sands, many places. So I'm interested in what kind of perspective and worldview is in his mind. Yeah. But going back to your question, let's see.
Well, we'll watch that chapter of history unfold. I want to thank you for your deeply thoughtful answers across many, many subjects, for making Asian society feel so welcome here in Japan, giving us many ideas for dialogues, James and Terry. I think we have a big work plan here, and our SB team. I also realize we have to correct a historic problem here, which is you've only been to New York and Washington. So Nanako Tingleaf, where are you? We have a member of our Texas board here. You have to go to the rodeo in Texas. And we're going to help take care of this because you have to see more of America. So we welcome you, and we welcome to further this dialogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.